Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's That's Debatable. Welcome back to my podcast. I'm so excited to film this first episode and to kind of get started with this whole process. As we delve into this kind of conversation surrounding politics and culture and the Bible, I just want to remind everyone that I do have a point of view, and I'm a person, and it's innately humane for me to have a point of view, and that's normal. And it might come across in some of the things I'm saying, and I'm going to do my best to present both sides with as much truth as I possibly can and to have my facts and my sources. And so I hope that you can just appreciate that and we can enjoy this journey together. So, before I really get into it, since this is the first episode, I do want to tell everyone just a little bit about me and kind of why I'm doing this, how this started, things like that. So, my name is Jasmine, as I've previously mentioned. I am currently a junior studying political science, journalism with an emphasis in news and storytelling, and honors humanities. And those are just three different ways of saying that I read a lot and I write a lot. From the greats of Western philosophy to my Bible to studying how to be a great reporter, I am constantly reading and writing. I like to read and write and to understand how humans and societies have worked in the past and how they will continue to work in the future. I love writing about current affairs. I love being involved in politics. You'll pretty much find me reading the news or watching the news any moment that I'm not doing some of my homework. So that's a little bit about like why I'm interested in this. Another thing that's really important about me is I am a devout Christian. Before I subscribe to a political party, before I subscribe to anything else in this world, I am a Christian first and foremost. And kind of along with that, I have always had a passion for justice. It's something that has been on my heart since before I could remember. When I was on my speech and debate team in high school and all throughout college, that's how I knew I wanted to study political science. And it's just something that I've always cared about, which is fitting because as a Libra, my astrological sign is actually the scales of justice. So that is just something that I've always been passionate about. So kind of that's pretty much who I am. I am always someone who has never just listened to the right or the left side of things, never just watched Fox or CNN alone. I like getting my news from both sides, and I think that the news and the truth are somewhere in the middle of all of the chaos that our country is experiencing, and it's important for people like us to want to find that, to want to seek that out and to actually understand what's going in the middle. So, I've got my laptop here with all my notes on it. I have my Bible here for when we get to that part. I'm really excited to just kind of get started on this conversation. So today, just one more quick note before I get started and delve into things. I want to say that I in no way am claiming any moral high ground or perfect reading or understanding of the Bible or anything along those lines. I, like every Christian, am a sinner myself, and I know what I am getting myself into, and I simply want to point out parts of the Bible that I think speak to what we're going through as a nation and that I think might be able to give us some insight or might be able to help us in some way, shape, or form. But I do not claim to know the perfect moral reading. I do not claim to understand the Bible better than someone else. I am just another Christian trying to make her way through this world. So, with all that being said, I want to talk today about what some on the right have deemed cancel culture. So, this is something that has been plaguing our society for a while. I think it happens on both sides. I think there's a lot kind of some people believe that cancel culture is not the right word for it. Others kind of believe that it's happening way too often. So, that's something I really want to talk about. Where the right calls it cancel culture, the left tends to say that it is not cancel culture, it is simply changing the culture and they're holding people accountable for wrongs that they have committed. So there are two very specific instances that I kind of want to go over that have happened roughly in the last month or so. And these two people that I want to talk about are Gina Carano, who played Cara Dune on The Mandalorian, and the infamous children's book writer, Dr. Seuss. So, in the case of Gina Carano, there are kind of really simple facts just to get us started with. So, Gina Carano has long been kind of a controversial figure. She's the kind of person who likes to post things on social media that might get attention, or she just happens to have controversial opinions. And so that is something that has gotten her trouble in the past. Hashtag Fire Gina Carano has trended multiple times on Twitter, and this time was no exception to that. So something that she posted that was controversial, I'm going to pull it up here and I'm going to read it to you all, is that she posted on an Instagram story, which she then later deleted, that it's a picture of a woman running away from Jews. And the picture says above it, the caption is, Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. And then there's a quote, and it says, quote, because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them for simply being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? End quote. So without context, without comment, Miss Carano posted this to her Instagram story. Later, almost immediately deleted it when it started receiving backlash. This made the rounds and upset many people for comparing, hypothetically, or implying that the right today, people on the right side of the spectrum, are experiencing some of what Jews experienced during the Holocaust. And this comparison drew intense outrage from both sides of the spectrum, really. We all know that Holocaust comparisons are really overwrought. Maybe they shouldn't be used as much as they are, because nothing, unless it's actual genocide, can compare to what happened during the Holocaust, which was a terrible, terrible time in world history. And so with that post, it got to a boiling point, and Lucasfilms ended up stating that they do not affiliate with her in any way, and she is not currently hired by them. So this comes after, obviously, she starred in the Mandalorian seasons, and it was rumored that she might have had her own spin-off show, which is obviously no longer going to be a thing. And so that's kind of what happened to her. She was then hired by the Daily Wire to produce and star in her own film, which is a right-wing outlet, co-founded by the famous right-wing speaker, Ben Shapiro. And that's kind of where she is now. So she was let go from Disney and Lucasfilms, and she's now working at a right-wing publication. And this has drawn kind of a variety of criticisms from across the aisle. So first, what has the right said about it? So the right really was not okay with this. They were very upset. They were mad. They got hashtag canceled Disney Plus to trend for a while, although Disney did not see much number change, as what their new show WandaVision is doing intensely great numbers. But they still got that to trend. The essential argument on the right, made by everyone from Ben Shapiro himself to Steven Crowder, who's another talk show host, to people like Glenn Beck and everyone on Fox News, all kind of believed that this was unfair. They basically hold the argument that you should not be canceled for what you have to say unless what you have to say directly affects or correlates to your job in some way. So this is kind of where the right was coming from. Something that they brought up in this conversation was that Pedro Pascal, who plays the Mandalorian in The Mandalorian, kind of made a similar comparison back in 2018. He posted a meme, which was a picture of children in concentration camps, and it said Germany circa the time of the Holocaust, and a picture below of kids in cages, and it said America 2018. It later was revealed that these pictures were not from America, and they were not pictures of and they were not from 2018. So that kind of got people riled up, saying he made a Holocaust comparison, but he wasn't fired. People on the left pointed out that he wasn't fired because the post came in 2018 before he was hired for The Mandalorian. So they're saying it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges. So that's all kind of what the right is thinking about this entire situation. Just this past week, a lot of people claimed that the CPAC stage, which is a conservative conference that was held in Florida this last week, they were saying that it was a Nazi symbol and comparing everyone who attended to Nazis. So the right kind of feels that there is a double standard between what is happening on the left, canceling Gina Carano for her post while kind of ignoring or not really paying attention to the fact that many on the left make comparisons to the Holocaust all of the time. So the main argument there is kind of people should not be canceled for things that they say that don't really relate to their job, because you have a right to free speech. And that's just that. Now, on the left, obviously, this is not deemed cancel culture so much as it is deemed paying the price for something that you did. So they feel that because what Gina Carano did is pretty much universally accepted as wrong, and I think everyone on both sides of the aisle kind of agreed with that notion, that it's okay to punish that behavior because she was hired by a private company. Disney does not have to protect First Amendment speech. They are a private company. They can fire and hire whoever they would like, whenever they would like. And that is the left's argument for kind of why this all went down. So essentially their claim is that she was simply bad for business. So many claimed after Miss Carano was fired that there are being cries of censorship and it's not fair. But the point is that Disney really has the right to do what they want. A writer for No Film School wrote, Gina Carano wasn't blacklisted. She was fired for being bad for business. This was by George Edelman. And his argument in this article is essentially that Hollywood and Lucasfilms care about one thing only. He says it's, quote, selling Star Wars, end quote. So that Gina Carano made it hard to sell the product of The Mandalorian, and that's why she was canceled. And there's really no other reason behind it. It's just she was bad for business, and that's how they felt about it, and so they had a right to do it. And so there's not much to say on the left except for the argument that they have a right to do it. And there's really, it doesn't matter how you feel about it or how you felt about the post or what you thought. The point is she did something wrong and there's a punishable offense for that. And so that's kind of what their whole argument is, which seems hard to disagree with, but the right has done a great job at trying. So that's kind of what happened with Gina Carano. Many people ended up kind of fizzling out once the Daily Wire hired her, as the conversation wasn't up for Disney anymore and it didn't really matter. But she remains kind of a hot button issue, if you will, that the conversation surrounding whether or not we should be able to fire people based on their beliefs, or if political beliefs should become a kind of protected class in America, kind of like we protect people based on race and gender. So that's the conversation that's surrounding her. And then the second cancellation that I wanted to just briefly talk about today is the cancellation of Dr. Seuss. So the second cancellation, or so has been deemed by the right, has been canceling 6 Dr. Seuss books. This first started because President Joe Biden took Dr. Seuss off of his presidential proclamation for Read Across America Day. So Dr. Seuss just simply wasn't being promoted, which is not technically the canceling that Republicans were talking about. However, the canceling that Republicans were talking about were regarding the 6 books that are no longer going to be published by Dr. Seuss. So the people that own the rights to his books said that they are going, so basically he's been criticized for the way that he portrays people. So there are books like And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, If I Ran the Zoo, and those are, I believe, the 2 that many people are talking about. So some say, so in this article by NPR, written by T.R. Jenkins and Jessica Yarmosky, they said, some of Seuss's classics have been criticized for the way they portray people of color. In And to Think I Saw It on Mulberry Street, for example, a character described as Chinese has 2 lines for eyes, carries chopsticks and a bowl of rice, wears traditional Japanese-style shoes. In If I Ran the Zoo, 2 men said to be from Africa are shown shirtless, shoeless, and wearing a grass skirt as they carry an exotic animal. Outside of his books, the author's personal legacy has also come into question. Seuss wrote an entire minstrel show in high school and performed as the main character while he was wearing full blackface. So, Dr. Seuss's books are being questioned for having the right for characterizing people in a very racial way, and many are suggesting that it is not appropriate for them to continue to be published. This argument is coming mostly from the left side of the aisle, who are saying that it is not okay, that you shouldn't have to force children to read books that depict people in a certain way because they don't know better than to understand them, or to add nuance to them, I should say. So this is something that is happening right now, obviously, and the right is responding in the kind of the same way that they responded to Gina Carano. Fox News has run a plethora of segments saying Dr. Seuss is canceled, why Dr. Seuss shouldn't be canceled, why are they doing this right now. They are comparing it to book burning on his podcast today. Ben Shapiro read from Fahrenheit 451, which is a book by Ray Bradbury, which deals with book burning, and so many on the right are extraordinarily outraged by this and are just not handling it well. So the basic thing here is to suggest that there are historic wrongs in Dr. Seuss's books, and he portrays people in a light that is not positive or pleasing to those specific cultures, and he should be canceled for that. And the right is suggesting that that is not, we cannot hold people to a standard that we have in the 21st century when they were not a part of that same culture. Now, not everyone obviously agrees with this. Some are suggesting that this is totally and absolutely the correct move. So in a Vox article by Aaron Ruper, he discusses kind of the fact that, first of all, Dr. Seuss has not been canceled. It is only the 6 books that are not going to be published anymore. They are not going, because this was Dr. Seuss Enterprises, by the way, who said this. They announced that the publishers and the enterprise, the company that publishes and licenses the author's works, announced that these books will no longer be published because they portray people of color in ways that are both hurtful and wrong. So this is in part also happening because of a 2019 study that found Dr. Seuss's works trafficked in Orientalism, anti-Blackness, and white supremacy. So that is the main reason for these books, as I mentioned earlier, is being canceled. So the left is suggesting that this is not the wrong thing to do, that Dr. Seuss should not be forced down kids' throats. He doesn't have to stop being read, but we don't have to promote him on days such as Read Across America Day. It's just not important that we do that. So there are a plethora of articles out today suggesting that we should not be so, that the right is too concerned with what is happening with Dr. Seuss and his books right now, and that's just not something that they should really be intensely focusing on, because it's kind of just not important. So the left and the right are definitely, Dr. Seuss, the Dr. Seuss question has had a lot more problems than the Gina Carano debate did, because a lot of conservatives are taking this to be an attack directly on culture. Dr. Seuss has been read for years. I mean, I personally think I learned how to rhyme because of Dr. Seuss, so I think that this one is hitting just a little bit closer to home than something else. So I think that is why it's really getting to a point where it just feels like the right feels like the left is trying to attack the culture, and the left feels like they are bettering the culture and don't understand the attacks from the right. And that's kind of where we are right now. It's just this like back and forth between what is the better culture, and is it okay to take things out of culture to make things better, or should we leave everything in culture and let the people who are taking in the culture decide what they want to do with each of those things. So I think that pretty much sums it up. Dr. Seuss, obviously, someone who has been prominent in literature, in reading, in everything for many children all along their growing up. So it is this one I think is a little tougher for everyone to see, but at the end of the day, this is what's happening. And now 6 books will not be published. I'm trying to find which of those 6 books they will be exactly. Okay, here they are. According to CNN, it will be And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, If I Ran the Zoo, Mick Elligott's Pool, On Beyond Zebra, Scrambled Egg Super, and The Cat's Quizzer. So obviously not his famous Green Eggs and Ham, One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, or The Cat in the Hat. But many conservatives are suggesting that that is only a matter of time away, as we kind of are seeing this, what they deem to be cancel culture, only seems to be ramping up in the culture. So that's kind of what's going on in the culture. It's take what side you will, understand it as you will, whether you will understand it as the culture is simply being refined and kind of pulled away from things that we should have known were wrong all along and we simply didn't, or they were simply mistakes, or should all the information be out there? Should all the information be present for everyone who wants it? And you should let people make their own decisions on how they want to teach kids and whatnot. And they should not have pulled these books or fired Gina Carano for something that she said. So really, those are kind of the 2 options at like where we stand at the crossroads. Of course, there's a middle ground for everything, and there should be moderation in everything, but it more and more seemingly does not feel like we are there at this point. So I kind of want to get into what this all reminded me of in the Bible. So I want to read to you a section from John 8, which is a section that is famous to many people, and I'm sure you will recognize it as soon as I start reading it if you are at all familiar with any stories in the Bible. So I'm just going to go ahead and read. It's only a couple verses. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. So in John chapter 8, starting with verse 3, the word of the Lord. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what do you say? They said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as though he did not hear. So when they continued asking him, he raised himself up and said to them, and this is what I really, really want to focus on today, He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. So this is a very classic story that many people reference all the time, is this Jesus and the adulteress who was about to be stoned to death. And these Pharisees bring the woman to Jesus thinking they're going to catch him in kind of a trap and say, oh, he's going to deny the law of Moses. That must mean that he's not the true son of God. They're trying to find a way to prove that this is not actually the son of God. So they bring this adulteress to him, and he, instead of saying, you're right, that's what the law of Moses says, or saying, nope, that's not what the law of Moses says, totally ignore that, he instead draws this line in the sand, writes something in the sand that biblical scholars are not sure exactly of what he is saying, but when he stands up again, he speaks to the Pharisees and utters this immensely powerful and unbelievably charging line. He says, he who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. And I think this is exemplary of where we are today. I think it's exemplary of where we need to be today. And I think it's exemplary of how we should be responding to all these moments of cancel culture and of confusion and of people saying that this person did this wrong and saying that this person might not have understood this context, or that this person was wrong at this time period. And you can't excuse historical context, and you can't excuse that they didn't know about it at the time, and all of these things that we're talking about right now. I think it all boils down to, he who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. And I think that what cancel culture, or what changing the culture, or what, and whatever you want to call it, righting a wrong, or punishing people for what they've done, or anything like that, whatever side of the aisle you fall on, whoever you think said something wrong, I think it's important to look inward and to understand that we are not the ones to be doing this. We have logs in our own eyes, and we're calling out specks in others. We have so many things that we are doing wrong on a daily basis. We've probably said things on social media inappropriately. We're probably the ones that have done things inappropriate that we needed to repent for in our lives, that we need Jesus for. So I just want us all to keep in mind that no one is without sin, and that these people rooting for them to be canceled or to be fired because they had one or two misgivings, to be shunned from the public square or the public conversation because of something that you did that you may or may not have even known was wrong, seems so inappropriate and so unchristian. Regardless of the side of the side of the aisle that you're on, regardless of how wrong what the person did was, Jesus came to save all sinners. And I think that is just something that our society, and in general all of us, are lacking, is that grace and that empathy that Jesus shows to this adulterer. And even though she did something wrong and she was standing before the Son of God, he says to her later on in the chapter, "Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you?" And then later he says, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." So when he has the right and the power to be condemning this woman for what wrong she has committed, for what wrong she has done, instead tells her to go and to sin no more. And so I think this is what the important aspect of it all is. I think this is what it gets down to. I think this is what all of culture gets down to. I think this is the conversation. This is the fight, is that we are all sinners. None of us are without sin. None of us are blameless. None of us are clean. None of us are without blemish. And I think that's the point, is that if you look on anyone's social media, you can find something they said that was wrong. If you look at anyone that's in the public sphere, you can find a tweet, a post, a blog, a Facebook page, a comment, a video, a speech, a slogan, something was wrong. Times do change, and we're all changing, and we're all saying things all the time. And now with the internet, everything is permanent, and we are lacking that element of forgiveness, that element of empathy, that element of understanding that I too am a sinner, and that I too have done wrong so many times in my life, that I'm not going to be the one to attack you for what you're doing, and instead I'm going to say, come alongside with me, brother, let's go repent for what we have done. Come alongside me, sister, and let's go thank God for his forgiveness and grace. And I just wish that as a society we could get back to that. I wish that as a society we could all get to the point where we remember that no one is without sin, that we remember that no one is without blame, that we remember that no one is without blemish, and that we remember that we all need Christ for that, and that is the purpose, right? And again, I just want to reiterate, I in no way have any moral authority over what the Bible says. I do not claim to understand it better than most. I do not claim to know it better than anyone else. I am simply suggesting that this is something that Christ teaches, and I think it's an important verse to wrestle with. It's an important verse to try to understand. It's an important verse to want to understand. And I think that we could all stand to do a little bit of a better job of that. So with that said, I really want to thank you guys all for listening to this first episode. I am super, super, super excited to have gotten through this. I hope that it was at all enlightening or at all interesting. Again, like I said, I am just kind of rolling with the punches here, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. I think that this is the fight for America, and I'm excited to do it along with you guys. So, in all of your conversations, I hope that you are a little bit better equipped with the facts of your side and the other side. And remember that everything is debatable.